The Breen ambassador's blue blood splattered the wall as his fist slammed into it, enraged that the humans dared ignore the Kralthak's galactic slaughter. Those fucking humans sit on their asses jacking off while billions die. They could crush the Kralthak like ants if they gave a single shit. Ceres howled, heaving breaths, hissing through his pointed teeth. His fellow Breen diplomat Xyloth rolled his eyes as he slouched in his chair. You know the humans. They don't do shit unless it's their asses on the line. Let aliens burn, they say, ain't our problem. That it will be. When the Kralthak come for all of us, who will the cowards hide behind then? Ceres circled the dimly lit briefing room like a caged tiger, fury building with each step. The space station's hum reverberated through the floor, a dull pulse throbbing in his skull. Careful, Ceres, Xyloth warned, pale eyes narrowing. Remember what happened when the Zendari pissed the humans off, trying to drag them into some border skirmish? The humans fucked their entire civilization into ash. 3 systems. Gone. Ceres paused, fists clenched. The damn humans could end the Kralthak with a snap of their entitled fingers. If they didn't step in soon, the Breen, the Council, everyone would burn. But if they pushed the humans too hard... Tricky, fickle, lethal creatures, the galaxy's last hope or its destroyers. Ceres growled, glaring into the void of space beyond the window, as if the stars themselves held the answer. Ceres leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Uncanny ability? More like they're paranoid as shit, always suspecting the worst. But go on. What happened next? Xyloth rubbed the back of his scaled neck, continuing the tale. So Reyes pulls up this recording right there in the Zendari High Council chambers. The Zendari leaders try to deny it at first, saying it's a fake, a fabrication. But Reyes doesn't even blink. He just keeps staring them down with those cold human eyes. Reyes tells them, "Cut the crap, we know it was you. Did you really think you could fool us? We've analyzed every piece of debris, every scrap of tech left behind. It's got Zendari fingerprints all over it." And then he leans in real close and says, "The question is, what are we going to do about it?" Ceres whistled low. Shit, that's ice cold. So the Zendari knew they were caught then, huh? What did they do? Start begging for mercy? Xyloth snorted. Oh, they tried to justify it at first. Said they were desperate, that the Korgath would destroy them if the humans didn't intervene. They practically got on their knees pleading with Reyes to go after the Korgath. And let me guess, the humans told them to get fucked? Ceres smirked. In so many words, yeah, Xyloth nodded. Reyes made it crystal clear that the humans weren't going to be their attack dogs, but that's not even the most impressive part. Reyes looks the Zendari High Council dead in the eyes and says, "We could crush you right now for what you've done. Wipe out your entire civilization with a single command, but we're not going to do that." Ceres's eyes went wide. Wait, seriously? The humans let them off the hook after they pulled that shit? Xyloth held up a clawed finger. Not quite. Reyes had one last message for the Zendari. He told them, "Consider this a warning. We'll leave you to deal with the Korgath on your own. But if you ever try to manipulate us again, if you so much as look at our colonies the wrong way, we will end you, thoroughly and completely. You'll be nothing more than a footnote in galactic history." Ceres shuddered, imagining the icy delivery of that threat. The humans could be utterly ruthless when provoked. So what happened to the Zendari after that? Xyloth shrugged. The Korgath conquered them, of course, enslaved their entire species, but the Zendari didn't dare try to involve the humans again. They knew if they did, it would be the last mistake they ever made. Ceres slouched back in his chair, mind reeling. The humans had dismantled the Zendari scheme with almost casual ease, seeing through their web of lies like it was nothing, and they'd done it all without firing a single shot. "That's the thing about humans," Xyloth said, as if reading Ceres's thoughts. "They're not just intelligent, they're cunning. They play the long game better than anyone. They could have wiped out the Zendari right then and there, but they didn't. They left them as a living reminder of what happens when you fuck with humanity." Ceres swallowed hard, a newfound respect and fear for the enigmatic humans settling in his gut. If the humans ever decided to turn their gaze on the rest of the galaxy, if they ever tired of their isolation and neutrality. The thought sent a shiver down his spine. The humans held the fate of the galaxy in their hands, whether they realized it or not. And if they didn't step in against the Kralthak soon, there might not be a galaxy left to save. Ceres stared at Xyloth, mouth agape in shock. The humans fed the Korgath intel on the Zendari. That's cold, man. I mean, I get punishing the Zendari for their deception, but actively helping their enemies wipe them out. That's ruthless. Xyloth nodded gravely. That's humanity for you. They don't take betrayal lightly. The Zendari thought they could play the humans for fools, but they underestimated just how far the humans were willing to go to make an example of them. Ceres shook his head in disbelief. I can't imagine what it must have been like for the Zendari, watching the Korgath armada descend upon their worlds, knowing that the humans had a hand in their downfall. It's the kind of thing that breaks a species, you know. Oh, it broke them all right, Xyloth said. The Zendari were once a proud people, but after the Korgath conquest, they were reduced to little more than slaves. Their cities were razed, their culture erased, their population decimated, and all because they dared to cross the humans. Ceres leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. But surely the humans must have felt some remorse, some guilt over the fate they condemned the Zendari to. They're not completely heartless, are they? Xyloth shrugged. Who knows what goes on in those human minds? They're an enigma, Ceres. One moment they're preaching peace and cooperation, the next they're orchestrating the downfall of an entire civilization. All I know is that the Zendari incident sent a clear message to the rest of the galaxy. Don't fuck with humanity. Ceres sat back, letting the weight of Xyloth's words sink in. The humans were a force to be reckoned with, that much was clear. They had the power to shape the destiny of entire species, to build up empires or tear them down on a whim. And now, with the Kralthak threat looming over the galaxy, the humans once again held the fate of billions in their hands. Ceres gaped at Xyloth, struggling to comprehend the depths of human ruthlessness. They really just hung the Zendari out to dry like that? Let the Korgath enslave them without lifting a finger to help? Xyloth nodded grimly. The humans don't take kindly to being manipulated. They made an example of the Zendari, showed the galaxy what happens when you try to play games with humanity. Ceres shook his head in disbelief. But to condemn an entire species to subjugation, that's cold, man, even for the humans. That's just how they operate, Xyloth said with a shrug. They've got their own code of justice and they stick to it no matter what. Cross them and you pay the price. Simple as that. Ceres mulled over this revelation for a moment, his brow furrowed in thought. Still, I can't imagine they were happy about the Korgath expanding their empire. Conquering the Zendari would have made them even more of a threat to galactic stability. A knowing smile tugged at the corner of Xyloth's mouth. Ah, but here's where it gets interesting. See, a few years after the Korgath took over Zendari space, a group of rebels managed to steal a ship and make a run for it. They hightailed it straight to the nearest human colony, begging for asylum. Ceres leaned forward in his seat, intrigued. No shit. And what did the humans do? Don't tell me they actually took them in after everything that went down. Xyloth chuckled. Not at first, no. Plenty of folks in the human government were still pissed about the whole staged attack thing. They weren't exactly keen on sticking their necks out for a bunch of Zendari refugees. Can't say I blame them, Ceres muttered. But get this, Xyloth continued, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. The leader of these rebels, a gal named Kylara, she wasn't about to take no for an answer. She demanded a face-to-face with none other than Robert fucking Reyes himself. Ceres' eyebrows shot up in surprise. The same Reyes who tore the Zendari a new one in front of their own High Council. Damn, that takes some serious quads. No kidding, Xyloth agreed. But Kylara, she marched right into Reyes' office and laid it all out for him, said her people had learned their lesson, that they were ready to make things right. Begged him to give them a chance to prove they could be allies instead of liabilities. Reyes leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowed as he considered Kylara's proposal. After a long moment he spoke, his voice low and measured. You're asking a lot, Kylara. Sharing your technology, pledging loyalty to humanity, these are not small things. Kylara met his gaze unflinchingly. I understand that, Ambassador Reyes, but my people are desperate. We've been under the Korgath's boot for too long, watched as they stripped our world bare and enslaved our children. We need help, and we're willing to pay any price to get it. Reyes drummed his fingers on the desk, the rhythmic tapping filling the tense silence. And what assurances can you give me that this isn't just another Zendari trick? Your people have a history of deception, after all. Kylara's shoulders slumped, a flash of shame crossing her face. I won't deny our past mistakes, Ambassador. We were foolish and desperate, and we paid a heavy price for our actions. But I swear to you, on the lives of my people, that we have learned from those errors. We want to make things right, to forge a new path forward with humanity as our allies. Reyes studied her for a long moment, searching for any hint of deceit in her expression. Finally he sighed. I want to believe you, Kylara, but I can't make this decision alone. I'll need to discuss your offer with my superiors and run thorough background checks on you and your followers. We can't afford to take any chances, not with the Korgath threat looming over us all. Kylara nodded, a glimmer of hope sparking in her eyes. I understand, Ambassador. We'll cooperate fully with any vetting process you deem necessary, and in the meantime, I can begin sharing some of our technological schematics as a show of good faith. Reyes raised an eyebrow. That's a bold move, Kylara. Your people guard their technological secrets fiercely. Are you sure you're willing to part with them so readily? Kylara's jaw tightened, a flicker of pain crossing her face. We've lost everything, Ambassador. Our homes, our freedom, our very way of life. If sharing our knowledge with humanity can help us reclaim even a fraction of what was stolen from us, then it's a small price to pay. Reyes leaned forward, his eyes intense. I'll be frank with you, Kylara. Your technology could be a game-changer in our fight against the Korgath. Cloaking devices, energy shields. These are the kinds of advancements that could tip the scales in our favor. But I need to know that we can trust you, that this isn't just another ploy to manipulate us into fighting your battles for you. Kylara met his gaze steadily. I give you my word, Ambassador. The Zendari will stand with humanity, not as puppets or pawns, but as true allies. We've learned the hard way what happens when we try to deceive your kind. We won't make that mistake again. Reyes sat back, a thoughtful expression on his face. Very well, Kylara. I'll take your proposal to my superiors and push for a thorough but expedited vetting process. If everything checks out, we'll discuss the terms of our alliance further. But let me be clear, if we do this, if we take you in and support your rebellion, there can be no half measures. You'll be putting your fate in our hands, trusting us to see this through to the end. Are you prepared for that? Kylara squared her shoulders, a fierce determination burning in her eyes. We're prepared to do whatever it takes, Ambassador. Ceres' eyes widened in surprise. The humans actually agreed to help the Zendari rebels, even after everything that happened between their two species? Xyloth nodded, a satisfied smile on his face. They did indeed. Reyes and his superiors saw the potential in allying with Kylara's group. With the advanced Zendari tech and the rebels' insider knowledge of Korgath tactics, they knew they could strike a serious blow against the Empire. Still, it must have been a tough call, Ceres mused, leaning back in his seat. The humans had every reason to tell the Zendari to fuck off after that stunt they pulled. Guess Reyes and his bosses are more pragmatic than I gave them credit for. Oh, they're pragmatic, all right, Xyloth chuckled. But they also know a good opportunity when they see one. By helping the Zendari rebels, they gained access to their cloaking tech and energy shields. That kind of edge could come in real handy down the line. Ceres nodded thoughtfully. True enough. And I bet integrating that tech into their ships and defenses was a hell of a lot easier with the rebels' cooperation. Probably saved the humans years of reverse engineering. Exactly, Xyloth said, tapping a clawed finger on the table for emphasis. But that was just the beginning. Kylara and her rebels, they weren't content to just sit on their asses in some human colony. They wanted payback against the Korgath, and they wanted it bad. Ceres frowned. Payback, what, like some kind of guerrilla campaign? Hit-and-run attacks to bleed the Korgath dry? Xyloth shook his head, a glint of excitement in his eyes. Nah, man, Kylara had bigger plans than that. She wanted to take the fight right to the Korgath's front door, liberate the Zendari homeworld, no less. Liberate the... Ceres trailed off, shaking his head in disbelief. How the hell did she plan to pull that off? The Korgath steamrolled the Zendari in the First War, and that was before they had a whole damn planet's worth of slaves and resources to draw on. Ah, but this time around the Zendari had a secret weapon, Xyloth said, leaning forward conspiratorially. Human ingenuity. Ceres raised a skeptical eyebrow. Human ingenuity? The hell's that supposed to mean? Xyloth grinned. It means Kylara wasn't just working with human tech. She was working with human tactics, human strategy. See, she and her top rebels spent weeks holed up with the best military minds humanity had to offer, cooking up a plan to hit the Korgath where it hurts. Try a plan, huh? Ceres said, his interest piqued. I'm guessing it was a bit more sophisticated than charge in guns blazing and hope for the best, then. Who could say that? Xyloth chuckled. The humans, they're master strategists, see? They know how to find an enemy's weak points and exploit the hell out of them. In this case, they helped the Zendari rebels plan a series of surgical strikes on key Korgath installations. Ceres nodded slowly, beginning to see the shape of the plan. Let me guess. The rebels would use their cloaking tech to slip past the Korgath's defenses, hit their targets, and then bug out before the bastards knew what hit them. Got it in one, Xyloth said, snapping his fingers. But that's not all. While the rebels were wreaking havoc on the ground, the humans would be lending a hand from above, providing air support, bombing runs, you name it. A coordinated assault, Ceres mused, stroking his chin thoughtfully. Risky as hell, but I can see how it might work. The Korgath wouldn't know which way was up with all that chaos going on. And that's exactly what happened, Xyloth said, his voice rising with excitement. The rebels struck hard and fast, appearing out of nowhere to torch Korgath supply depots, weapons factories, even a couple of slave camps. All the while, human ships were raining hell down on any Korgath forces that tried to respond. Ceres let out a low whistle. Damn, I bet the Korgath never saw that coming. Must have been like getting sucker punched by a ghost. More like a whole army of ghosts, Xyloth laughed. By the time the Korgath got their shit together and mounted a counterattack, the rebels were long gone. And they'd left a trail of destruction in their wake that set the Korgath's occupation efforts back by months. Ceres shook his head in amazement. Unbelievable. I never thought I'd see the day when the Zendari actually managed to give the Korgath a bloody nose. And you're telling me they pulled it off with human help? Xyloth nodded, a fierce pride shining in his eyes. Damn right they did. The Zendari-Human Alliance, it sent shockwaves through the whole damn galaxy. Suddenly, everyone was talking about the rebels who'd done the impossible, the slaves who'd struck back against their masters, and lived to tell the tale. Ceres leaned back in his seat, a new respect for the once-despised Zendari kindling in his chest. Got to admit I'm impressed. Never thought those sneaky bastards had it in them. That's the power of human ingenuity for you, Xyloth said, raising his glass in a toast. With the right allies and the right plan, even the most downtrodden species can rise up and change the course of history. The Zendari proved that, beyond a shadow of a doubt. Ceres clinked his glass against Xyloth's, a thoughtful expression on his face. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? If the humans can help pull off a stunt like that, what else might they be capable of? What other miracles might they have up their sleeves? Xyloth smiled enigmatically, taking a long sip of his drink. Stick around long enough, my friend, and I have a feeling we'll find out. Something tells me the Zendari rebellion was just the beginning of humanity's impact on this crazy galaxy of ours. Ceres leaned back, eyes wide with shock. The Korgath had no defense, their ships were just disabled, just like that? Xyloth nodded gravely. The energy weapon cut through their shields like they weren't even there. Korgath warships, the pride of their fleet, were dead in the water, floating helplessly as the human Zendari forces picked them off one by one. Holy shit, Ceres breathed, trying to picture the carnage. The Korgath must have been shitting themselves, to go from being on the brink of victory to watching their ships get swatted out of the sky. They were in complete disarray, Xyloth confirmed. Their ground forces, cut off from support and reinforcements, quickly crumbled under the renewed human Zendari offensive. Key positions fell back into Allied hands, and the Korgath were pushed back on all fronts. Ceres shook his head in disbelief. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for the Korgath commanders. To have the tables turned on them so suddenly, so completely. It was a humiliating defeat, Xyloth said. The Korgath had always prided themselves on their military might, their technological superiority. To be outmatched so thoroughly by a species they had once conquered and enslaved, no less. It was a bitter pill to swallow. I'll bet, Ceres murmured. So what happened next? Did the Korgath surrender, or did they try to fight on? Xyloth's expression turned thoughtful. The Korgath are a proud species, Ceres. They don't surrender easily. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, they were determined to fight to the last. They pulled back to their core systems, fortifying their defenses and preparing for a final stand. Ceres leaned forward, his voice low. But the humans and Zendari weren't about to let them regroup, were they? Not after coming so far, gaining so much ground. Xyloth shook his head. No, they weren't. The Allied forces pressed their advantage, launching a series of coordinated strikes on Korgath strongholds. With their new energy weapons and the element of surprise on their side, they were able to punch through the Korgath lines and strike at the heart of their empire. Ceres let out a low whistle. I can't even imagine the kind of planning and coordination that must have taken, the logistics alone. It was a massive undertaking, Xyloth agreed. But the humans and Zendari were determined to see it through. They knew that this was their chance to end the Korgath threat once and for all, to free the galaxy from their tyranny. Ceres leaned forward, his eyes wide with amazement. Sonic weapon. I never would have thought of that. The humans are full of surprises, aren't they? Xyloth nodded, a grin spreading across his face. They certainly are. The Korgath had no idea what hit them. One moment they were pressing their attack, confident in their superior numbers and firepower. The next, their ships were adrift, their crews writhing in agony as the sonic waves tore through their bodies. Ceres shuddered at the thought. It must have been a horrific sight, to see such powerful warriors reduced to helpless, quivering masses. It was, Xyloth agreed, his voice turning somber. But it was also a necessary evil. The Korgath had shown time and again that they would not stop until they had conquered or destroyed everything in their path. The humans and Zendari had to use every tool at their disposal to bring an end to their tyranny. Ceres nodded, understanding the difficult choices that had to be made in war. So, with the Korgath fleets incapacitated, I assume the humans and Zendari pressed their advantage. They did, Xyloth confirmed. The Allied forces launched a massive offensive targeting key Korgath strongholds and supply lines. With their ships out of commission and their troops in disarray, the Korgath were unable to mount an effective defense. Ceres could almost picture the scene. Human and Zendari ships sweeping through Korgath space, their weapons cutting through the enemy's defenses like a hot knife through butter. Ground troops storming Korgath bases, sonic devices in hand, rendering their foes helpless before them. It must have been a sight to behold, Ceres murmured almost to himself, the once mighty Korgath Empire, crumbling before the combined might of the humans and Zendari. Xyloth's expression turned thoughtful. It was a turning point, to be sure, but the Korgath are nothing if not tenacious. Even with their forces in shambles, they refused to surrender. They fought to the last, making the humans and Zendari pay for every inch of ground they took. Ceres shook his head, marveling at the stubbornness of the Korgath. I can't imagine the toll that must have taken on the Allied forces, to fight an enemy that would rather die than admit defeat. It was a brutal campaign, Xyloth agreed, his voice heavy with the weight of memory. The losses on both sides were staggering, but in the end, the humans and Zendari prevailed. They broke the back of the Korgath war machine and liberated the worlds that had suffered under their rule for so long. Ceres sat back in his chair, trying to process the magnitude of what he had just heard. The The Korgath had been the scourge of the galaxy for centuries, their name synonymous with fear and oppression. To think that they had finally been defeated, that the galaxy was free of their tyranny. "It's almost too much to believe," Ceres said softly. "The Korgath gone, the humans and Zendari victorious. It's like something out of a legend." Xyloth chuckled, a twinkle in his eye. "Oh, it's very real, my friend, and it's a testament to the power of unity and determination. The humans and Zendari, two species that had every reason to hate and mistrust each other, came together in the face of a common enemy. They pooled their resources, their knowledge, their strength, and they achieved the impossible." Ceres nodded, a newfound respect for both species blooming in his chest. "It's a lesson we could all stand to learn from, that our differences, our past grievances, they pale in comparison to what we can accomplish when we work together." Xyloth raised his glass in a toast. "To the humans and Zendari," he declared solemnly. "May their alliance serve as an example to us all." Ceres clinked his glass against Xyloth's, the weight of the moment settling over him like a mantle. The galaxy had changed, he realized. The balance of power had shifted, and a new era was dawning. An era of hope, of possibility, of a future free from the shadow of Korgath oppression. Ceres's mouth fell open in shock as he processed the audacity of the humans' strategy. They turned the Korgath's own invasion against them, used their own intel to arm the rebels. Xyloth nodded, a glint of admiration in his eyes. The Korgath never saw it coming. They thought they were launching a surprise attack, but instead they walked right into a trap of their own making. Ceres shook his head in disbelief. "I can't even imagine the chaos that must have erupted. The Korgath thinking they had the element of surprise, only to be met by a wall of resistance at every turn." "It was pandemonium," Xyloth confirmed. "The rebels struck hard and fast, hitting the Korgath supply lines, disrupting their communications and sowing confusion in their ranks. The Korgath's carefully laid plans fell apart in a matter of hours." Ceres leaned forward, trying to picture the scene. And the Korgath's response? They must have been furious, desperate to regain control. Xyloth's expression turned grim. They were. They lashed out with every weapon they had, trying to crush the rebellion through sheer force. But the rebels were too well prepared, too well armed. They had the Korgath's own tactics turned against them. Ceres let out a low whistle. "I can't believe the humans managed to orchestrate something like that. The sheer amount of coordination, the precision timing, it's mind-boggling." "That's the power of human intelligence," Xyloth said, tapping a clawed finger against his temple. "They see patterns and opportunities where others see only chaos. They have a gift for turning enemies into allies and allies into weapons." Ceres sat back, trying to wrap his mind around the implications. So what happened next? With the Korgath's counterattack in shambles, did they finally admit defeat? Xyloth's smile turned predatory. "Not quite. The Korgath are nothing if not stubborn. They refused to surrender even as their empire crumbled around them. But the humans and their allies had one final card to play." Ceres stared at Xyloth, his mouth agape. The weight of the humans' actions settled heavily in the room, a palpable presence that seemed to suck the air from their lungs. Xyloth leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant as he recalled the aftermath of the Korgath's defeat. It was chaos, Ceres. Pure, unadulterated chaos. The Zendari, the rebels, all those who had fought alongside the humans, they were left reeling. Worlds that had been under Korgath control for generations were suddenly free, but they had no idea what to do with that freedom. Ceres shook his head, trying to wrap his mind around the magnitude of the situation. "I can't even imagine all those different species, all those different cultures, suddenly thrown together without any guidance or support." "Exactly," Xyloth said, his voice heavy with the memory. "There were power vacuums everywhere. Warlords and would-be dictators springing up like weeds, each one trying to claim a piece of the Korgath's former empire for themselves. It was a breeding ground for conflict and strife." Ceres frowned, a thought occurring to him. But surely the humans must have known that would happen. They're not stupid. They must have realized that just toppling the Korgath without any kind of plan for the aftermath would lead to chaos. Xyloth chuckled, but there was no humor in the sound. Oh, they knew, but you have to understand, Ceres. The humans, they operate on a different level than the rest of us. They think in terms of centuries, millennia even. The short-term chaos, the power struggles. To them, that's just a blip on the radar. Blip. Ceres leaned forward, his brow furrowed. So what? They just didn't care about the suffering that their actions would cause, the lives that would be lost in the scramble for power. Xyloth sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. It's not that they didn't care. It's that they saw it as necessary, a painful but unavoidable step on the path to a better future. In their eyes, the alternative, leaving the Korgath in power, was far worse. Ceres sat back, his mind reeling. He had always known that the humans were different, that they operated by their own rules and their own moral code. But this was beyond anything he had ever imagined. Xyloth nodded, his expression grim. That's the way they operate, Ceres. They're not conquerors, not in the traditional sense. They don't want to rule the galaxy or shape it in their image. They just want to ensure that their interests are protected, that their way of life is secure. Ceres was silent for a long moment, his thoughts swirling like a maelstrom. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. Then I guess it's up to us, he said, meeting Xyloth's gaze. The Zendari, the rebels, all the species that the humans fought alongside. We have to pick up the pieces, forge our own path forward. It won't be easy, but what choice do we have? Xyloth's lips quirked in a small smile, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. No, it won't be easy, but we're not alone, Ceres. We have each other, and we have the lessons that the humans taught us, both the good and the bad. We'll find our way, one step at a time. Ceres nodded, a new sense of determination settling over him. The galaxy had been forever changed by the humans' actions, for better or for worse. And now it was up to them, the survivors, the ones left behind, to shape its future. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.